My second nitpick is this whole look, WWE, we get that Total Divas is using your talent, but you seriously need to pick a side. Is Total Divas kayfabe in the same universe as WWE kayfabe, or isn't it? Because when you have Nikki Bella acting like a complete jerk towards her sister and making this big fuss out of everything, and John Cena has nothing to say about it. Or if you have a few months ago actually, Daniel Bryan getting the absolute crap beat out of him, and Brie not showing up until WWE decides, oh, we can put Brie in this storyline, let's have her quit. And now all of a sudden they're bringing their freaking brother JJ into this and and then using Total Divas footage as proof that Brie Bella's a bad sister. They need to make up their minds. Is it the same universe or isn't it? Seriously, WWE, this is so frustrating to me.
And not to exacerbate your feelings, but I read something a little while ago that for the show Total Divas, which really didn't surprise me, we may be seeing a very quick reconciliation from the Bellas, probably as maybe even like a season 3 finale or something. This could be something that plays out all season long, only for them to reconcile at the end, which tells me that I don't know how that would affect the WWE product, because to me, here's the thing. I can buy reconciliations in pro wrestling. Hell, I was even able to buy Triple H and Shawn Michaels reconciling, and they had a feud that lasted years. And they did very personal, hateful things to each other. But they had a common enemy that was gargantuan in his power, in Vince McMahon, in an authority figure. Here, how am I going to buy a reconciliation when you've had Nikki tell Brie, you should have died in the womb? Yeah, it's going to be so crazy to me if because of Total Divas, if because they want to, pander to that, they do this quick reconciliation. This feud only goes on ever so long, which I don't even want it to drag out to begin with, but, when a feud resolves, that doesn't mean you just patch everything up. They just go on and they do different things, as solo acts. But if they're going to reconcile after all this, I'm like, well, then, yeah, you really need to make up your mind, because now it's starting to legitimately affect storylines, if that's the case. I mean, again, that's all purely speculative. But even so, with the points Ashton just mentioned, that actually happened. And it still begs the question, you've got to make a choice. Is Total Divas a part of the WWE canon, or isn't it? Because it's coming to the point now where it could have a very legitimate bearing on storylines in certain programs. And thank goodness that those storylines would only be, I'm assuming, diva-centric. But even so, it's not easy to think about. So I hope they do make up their mind. And I would like to keep it separate, or at least I'd like to be able to keep track, of what it is. So WWE, make a decision soon, please, because it's getting a little frustrating.
Exactly. So those are my only nitpicks. Otherwise, I was very happy with the show, especially compared to the last 2 weeks. So if you want to get right into the actual, well, I guess we should go over Smackdown, shouldn't we?
Not really much to talk about, because I'm going to be honest with everybody, I really didn't even tune in. I'm going to be honest. I read a recap report, and it doesn't even really seem like I missed much. I don't know, Ashton, if you took the time to watch it.
Dude, it was actually really obnoxious. The one thing that I will give credit to is Triple H. Triple H is amazing right now. At one point, there's just so much stuff going on. It was the whole opening segment. It was John Cena, and then next thing you know, Kane and Seth Rollins show up, and then Roman Reigns shows up, and then the lights go out and the Wyatt family appears, and then Jericho's music hit, and he comes out with Mark Henry and Big Show, and then Triple H comes out, and he does his best Teddy Long impression, and he says, well, you know what's up next, players. And it was just so great. I love Triple H right now. And he set up a 10-man tag match between those two sides, like 5 baby faces versus 5 heels. It was pretty obnoxious, but that was the SmackDown main event.
Yeah, and I read that it ended in DQ anyway, which is no surprise. Yeah, exactly. And you know what, Ashton, I gotta be honest, because I didn't watch it, I thought I would offer these sentiments instead. seeing what SmackDown's really become and being on the outside looking in and just even getting a recap report, it kind of hit me. Like it was like a wave that rushed towards me, and I'm like, wow, I'm actually really glad as well that we don't afford this like a full review on its own, because what's the point? I go back to the same issue again. Like NXT has its own distinct identity, its own unique flavor, and Raw, of course, being the flagship show, I mean, that's a given. But what exactly is SmackDown? To me, SmackDown is merely just something that you pad down everything with Raw. It's a recap show. It's
Yep.
a glorified recap show.
And there were two, and this is on TV. I'm not even talking about, I pulled it up one night and watched it. No, I had it on my TV at 8 p.m. on Friday night while you and I were on the phone, and I think you were playing some kind of a video game or something like that. But there were two separate times when they showed an entire Raw segment on SmackDown.
See, and that's the crap that when they did the first time, I'm like, okay, that's a little weird, but whatever.
Dude, I am convinced that if they would take SmackDown and trim out all of the advertisements for next week's Raw and all of the recaps from that week's Raw and the commercials, there would be less than 1 hour of actual unique content.
Right. And and this isn't me trying to be like one of the internet attitude era fans that you see that are like, oh, it was the best era ever, wrestling sucks now. But I do want to make a quick point. A little while ago, I was on the WWE network, and I went back and I watched a Raw from 2002. It was the night of the very first draft when Ric Flair and Vince McMahon were competing against each other. And you really saw the diversity of the roster and just everything take shape. And Vince was running SmackDown, and I remember his first draft pick was the freaking Rock. And, it's not even just the quality of the talent that I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the depth, and I feel like we do have that depth with NXT. There would be, I think, no issue in giving SmackDown its own identity again, especially because it would be a great
I was so devastated when they announced that the Raw was a super show and they started to basically blur the lines between SmackDown and Raw rosters, because one of my favorite events every single year was the draft. I loved trying to predict who was going to get drafted. And let's not allow ourselves to forget the most recent draft, the last draft that ever occurred that we know of, meaning something might happen in the future that could cause something to happen where we'd have more drafts. But in the past, the last draft, Mark Henry got drafted to SmackDown, and that was the year that he went on his first ever Hall of Pain gimmick, and that was where he really found himself.
Oh, yeah. I remember the interview he gave, too. He got so emotional. He cried. He said, this is my chance to get back to my athleticism. I think I deserve to be a world champion. I felt so much for him in that moment. And then to see him do it, I was like, yeah, Mark, you go
John,
get it.
That's the crazy thing. When he said that, you and I were sitting here, both of us were cringing, because we were like, oh, we really don't want Mark Henry to get a freaking world title run. He's so old. And then he did that.
And exactly, Ashton. And then he did that. And here's the thing, to go back to 2002 for a moment to just prove my point, we have to remember that the Undisputed Championship was a thing then, and they were able to make it work, because if I remember correctly, they would always have like maybe one contender for Raw 1 month, and then they'd establish a new number one contender maybe on the SmackDown side. So it's not even a case of, they have one world title, how can they make that work? You could very easily make it work. Give each brand its own pay-per-views like you used to, and have title defenses on those pay-per-views. The guy that's the world champion, the singular world champion, goes on both shows. So he's not really a soldier in any kind of camp. He has the gold, so he goes anywhere he pleases. And you weed out contenders that way. I just feel like with NXT, it would be a great platform for these guys to get on SmackDown. It'd probably be great for whatever network, well, in the case this being Sci-Fi, that has SmackDown. Because as we're going to talk about later, the little taste that Raw gave to NXT, I think the crowd was very receptive to it. Imagine if they had their own brand to work around them, that wasn't NXT, I mean. You could really, do all that stuff. and you can make SmackDown a legitimate B player again, if not an A player, because there was a long time I thought SmackDown was even better than Raw when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So it's just a shame to see where it
Well, I
is,
mean,
and that's
it's
why
kind
I
of
don't even feel the need.
it's kind of like how we feel like NXT is better than Raw now, even though it's supposed to be like the B, C, D, whatever show you want to call it. I think that you and I can definitely agree when we say that it is the better product than Raw for the most part. So it's not really a far-fetched idea that SmackDown could be better than Raw.
Absolutely not. In fact, it's funny you say that, Ashton, because when I really think about it, the quality of NXT to a certain degree reminds me of SmackDown way back when. You know, all that young, hungry talent, ready to make an impact, ready to do something. And I love that, because when I watch Raw and when I watch SmackDown, because it is just all of these main roster guys, it just seems like they are going through the motions, and that can be very, entertaining, but other times you're just like, wow, like it really doesn't seem like a lot of thought or effort or passion or anything really went into this, and that's especially true for SmackDown. Like, again, I thought this Raw was quite enjoyable, but SmackDown lately, it's just like, I'm not really feeling it. You have those 1 to 2 really great in-ring bouts for the night, but other than that, you have the Raw recaps, the insufferable commentary most times, and just everything else in between. It's just, oh man, it's really depressing for me.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it would be cool if they could almost set up like a hierarchy where if you do really well on NXT and you get noticed and you really move on up from NXT to the point that it starts to just feel like you're too big for NXT, then they call you up to SmackDown. And if it's kind of like with what they did with John Cena, like if it gets to a point where you are on SmackDown and you have become one of the top names in the company, then you get called up to Raw. It's like that hierarchy where it's like high school, college pros. You know what I mean? Like it's just like a direct
Yeah,
take.
you would pretty much do it the way that, and I can't believe I'm saying this for the second time in recent memory, how WWE video games actually do it, because they always start you out at like the developmental level. In that case, it would be NXT, and then if you impress enough, you get to choose what side you want to go in. But in your case, you've modified it where it actually is a legitimate hierarchy. No, you go here, here, and here, and that's how you kind of establish.
Right, because then like just imagine somebody who debuts on Raw. Then it's like, oh man, they must have big plans for this guy if he's skipping the SmackDown stage. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
even if you want to look at it from a kayfabe perspective, it makes it everything mean more in that perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, I would even sometimes get that feeling when I'd see like vignettes air for a certain person on Raw, and I know they'd be coming to the Raw brand, and then you'd see somebody like debuting on the SmackDown brand. I'm like, ooh, I wonder how this career is going to shake out, or that career is going to shake out. And really, that's all I'm looking for. Again, as I said earlier, I think WWE is in such a weird, bizarre age right now, because the talent, I think, is the best it's ever been, especially when you lump it in with NXT and the talent they're growing there. I mean, we have Kenta that's going to be making his first, I guess, public comments that we'll see at TakeOver 2, which is going to be amazing. And so the talent is there. It's just the direction for some of those talents and just the brands as a whole that just seems a little questionable to me at the moment. Again, nothing atrocious, and I don't want to put that point across, but it could be better. And I think you could really always say that about any product. But man, they've just got all the pieces. You've just got to make the right picture.
Exactly. We are completely off in La La Land right now.
Well,
We
yeah,
were just talking about SmackDown, so we're not too far off. But as far as SmackDown goes, yeah, it doesn't really have its own identity.
Well, I mean, and let's look through. I mean, I saw that Cesaro Ziggler had a match. Seemed like a pretty quick match from what I read. Then Sheamus bro kicked Cesaro after the match.
Because that's a great babyface maneuver.
Yeah, and I guess it made more sense in the context of what we saw on Raw, tonight. But it's funny that these guys are getting the more physical roles in their mid-card feud, whereas WWE actually trusts Ziggler and Miz to carry theirs more through speaking. I find that quite interesting. Yeah, as you said, 10-man tag that, of course, ended in a DQ finish because all that star power was too much to handle. Swagger, I saw attacked Bo Dallas after Bo Dallas defeated Zack Ryder. Thank you, Bo. It feels like Christmas. And yeah, other than that, Paige apparently defeated Brie. AJ was attacking Nikki, and Brie wanted to actually go defend her sister. Why? Okay.
Nobody knows, my friend. Nobody knows.
I know the angle they're trying to play out, but I really just want Brie to just be sick of her own crap and then just go on a tear, and I'm not holding my breath for that at this point.
Right.
And really, that really seemed to be the most notable stuff to discuss was the Brie stuff, the stuff with Cesaro Sheamus, the stuff with Bo Swagger, and yeah, I guess Cena's promo in the main event that fell out from it. Actually, that is one thing I will say. I heard the promo that Cena did on SmackDown was received quite well, that it was actually some top-notch work. So I can't really comment on that, obviously, but it seemed to get pretty good reviews, which seemed rare.
Well, guess what? He also cut a promo in Raw, and I'm sure we'll talk plenty about that.
Oh, yeah, we will. So with that said, do you want to just get right into it?
You know it.